Some of the most famous images of the Nazi period in Germany are from the many rallies that were thrown in support of the party, different organizations within it, and Hitler. The Nuremberg rallies that took place every September from the small rallies of the 1920s and early 30s to 1939, when the war in Europe began. After the Nazi seizure of power in 1933, the Nuremberg Party rallies became huge events, and among the rally-goers were members of the Hitler Jugend, the Hitler Youth, or HJ. The Hitler Youth were males between the age of 14 and 18. A large number of other rally attendees were members of Bund Deutsche Mädel, or the League of German Girls, or BDM. The BDM was made up of girls between the ages of 14 and 18. At the 1936 Nazi Party rally, over 900 BDM girls got pregnant, causing a national scandal. Many, not all, and perhaps not even most, but many of the girls had been pressured into sex, or forced into it, sometimes by members of the Hitler Youth, sometimes by much older men. The result? Most of the girls were made to have abortions, whether they wanted the procedure or not. Welcome to History on Fleek. Today we examine the untold underbelly of the Hitler Youth movement. Those of you familiar with the hit 1972 movie and Broadway play Cabaret will recognize the title of this section of our video. In the Oscar-winning movie, there is a wholesome scene of German farmers and townspeople sitting at an outdoor tavern, drinking, laughing, and talking. Suddenly, a teenage boy gets up and starts singing an innocent-sounding song which quiets the crowd. But as the song goes on, it's revealed that the singer and two of his friends are wearing the uniform of the Hitler Youth. And soon the song takes an ominous turn, and by the end, the entire crowd is giving Hitler salutes and singing the lines, "Tomorrow belongs to me." The Hitler Youth were not Boy Scouts, as much as some former members of the organization insist it was. Yes, many HJ events and activities were very much like those of the Boy Scouts: camping, hiking, sing-alongs, swimming, skiing, learning woodcraft, and more. But they also spent much of their time marching, being taught basic military drill, and most insidious of all, the ideology of hatred that was Nazism. Behind all the innocent things the Hitler Youth did, there was ideological training, and the boys of the HJ learned three primary things. 1. As Germans, they were members of the master race, or Herrenvolk, and superior to all others, especially the people the Nazis said were the arch-enemy of all Germans, the Jews. 2. That as members of the master race, it was their destiny to rule the world. 3. That Adolf Hitler was to be obeyed without question, was the embodiment of Germany, and was the Messiah of the German people, here to lead them to a new golden age. 3 rules for disaster. Shortly after taking power, Hitler delivered a famous quote talking about opponents of his movement, saying that they say, "I will not come over to your side. I calmly say, your child belongs to us already. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community." To Hitler, the youth of Germany were the future of his movement and of Germany. In his vision, they needed to be taught only that which served the state and the party. The 3 most important features of Nazi education have already been mentioned, and to be honest, other than technical instruction which evolved into weapons and tactics instruction, that's all there was to Nazi education. The themes of German ethnic superiority and the so-called evil nature of the Jews were what virtually every other lesson revolved around. Put simply, many of the members of the Hitler Youth were brainwashed, and those that weren't often bought into elements of Nazi thinking because they agreed with them to a degree, or because, like most young people, they did not want to stand out. The Hitler Youth and the BDM were the 2 biggest elements of the Nazi youth movement, and membership in them was obligatory. You had to join, though some people managed to evade it for a while or found ways to slack off. However, there were voluntary organizations for younger children. For girls aged 10 to 14, there was Jungmädelbund, the Young Girls League. For boys aged 10 to 14, the DJ, or DJV, for Deutsches Jungvolk in der Hitlerjugend. Most Nazi Party members sent their younger children to meetings and activities of these organizations, and quite a number of non-party members did as well, hoping that membership in them would help their children and perhaps their parents get by better in the new Germany. Quite simply, the HJ and the BDM were limited to Germans of German descent. That makes sense, at least on the surface. However, there were other German citizens, many of whose families had been in Germany for centuries. These would be German Jewish children. In the first 2 years of the Nazi regime, the Jews were not the biggest target of the Nazis' hatred. Before they could deal with the Jews, the Nazis needed to secure their place at the top, and to do so, they had to get rid of more powerful enemies, the Communists, the Social Democrats, the trade unions, and smaller groups of more liberal thinkers such as many journalists, etc. In 1935, though, the Nazis passed the Nuremberg laws, which put severe limits on the Jews of Germany and denied them entry into the cultural life of Germany. In other words, they were isolated from the rest of the country. Even before 1935, Jewish children began to feel isolated and threatened by what was going on in their country. And the people that most represented the Nazi movement to young people was the Hitler Jugend. In the years before World War II, the Hitler Youth terrorized the Jewish children of Germany. Jewish German survivors of the Holocaust and writings from the time describe daily beatings, bullying, name-calling, and humiliation at the hands of the Hitler Youth. For years, no Jewish child was safe on the street alone. And though there were times when Jewish boys would band together in what amounted to self-defense gangs, they were almost always outnumbered. And when the police got involved, they were always blamed for the trouble. The Hitler Youth were virtually untouchable when it came to the things they did to the Jewish kids of Germany before the war. One of the pillars of the Nazi state was the idea of the Führerprinzip, the principal leader. As you might imagine, this had much to do with Hitler being the head of the German state and the leader of the German people. But there was more to it than that. The Führerprinzip meant that at every level of society, there were leaders and followers. And it was the duty of every person to follow the orders of the leader ahead of them. In Nazi ideology, people, even Germans, were not created equal. Some were superior, and some inferior. A significant aspect of this idea was of das Blut, or the blood. The Nazis were fanatical believers that the blood carried the traits and culture of a race, and those traits shared by ancestors. This was the root of Nazi anti-Semitism. It did not call for hatred of the Jews because of religious differences, but because they genuinely believed that Jewish and many other people's blood was inferior. Of course, the Nazi idea of the blood went much further than the belief that people's actual blood was superior. It was a kind of early view on genetics and the idea that Germans carried superior traits from biology and evolution. This also meant that within German society, it was clear that those who truly believed in Hitler's vision of the world and who excelled in it must truly be superior, which meant their blood was superior, and therefore their children, for the most part, would be superior too. This meant that the gifted youth of Germany had to be specially educated, for they were what Hitler thought as the vanguard of the future. Most of these gifted youth, but not all, were from the families of party members and higher Nazi Party officials. Many of them were the sons of the Golden Pheasants, a derogatory nickname for the regional leaders of Germany, or Gauleiters, who wore brownish gold uniforms and strutted about like they were God's gift. Imagine the arrogance of their children. From a young age, they were taught that they were superior beings, above all others on the planet, as both individuals and as part of the German nation. At the Napolas, the Nationalpolitische Lehranstalt, or National Political Teaching Institute, sons of the Nazi elite learned about Nazi ideology and governance, for they were seen as the inheritors of the Nazi state. Many of these boys and young men were hated, even by many other members of the Hitler Youth, for their place in society and their attitude of superiority towards other Germans. Had the 1936 party rally scandal in Nuremberg happened during the war, it's likely most of those pregnant girls and young women would not have been coerced into having an abortion, but would probably have been pressured to having the child. In 1936, the Nazis had only been in power for 3 years and were still very sensitive to public opinion. The public opinion was against girls getting pregnant and young women getting pregnant when single. By 1942, this attitude had changed, at least for those in the party making the rules and setting the tone for society. By this time, Nazi ideology had been teaching that motherhood and the home were women's natural place for years. Also, by 1942, German casualties were piling up, and boys grew up to be soldiers. Though in 1942, many hardcore Nazis didn't quite understand that their days were numbered. Women were taught cooking, sewing, child-rearing, and myths about the role of women in German history. They were also taught the basics of Nazi ideology to pass that knowledge on to their youngsters before they even went to school. One last thing about the BDM, the Hitler Youth and parents, in yet another gross abuse of power, the Nazis encouraged the boys and girls of Germany to keep an eye on their parents for any sign that they were anti-Nazi, anti-Hitler, defeatist, or critical of the Nazi policies against the Jews, or worse yet, helping Jews to avoid persecution and deportation to the East, as the Nazis called their transport to the extermination camps in Poland. Alfons Heck, a Hitler Youth member who received a medal for bravery in battle from the hands of Hitler towards the end of the war, called the experience of the Hitler Youth the biggest case of child abuse in world history. He may have been right. This is History on Fleek. We'll see you next time.